So please welcome to the stage Ms. Rita Moreno.
I want to tell you, little inside stories, is that I kept breaking up with this last thing. And that was Frank Oz doing Animal. And it was someone else doing the little symbols. That was somebody else doing. Okay, anyway, I kept breaking up. These shows were shot in London, England. And in London, England, they do not do overtime. In studios, they do not. And Jim Henson finally came to me. He said, "You have to stop breaking up because if we have 10 minutes left, and if you break up again, that's how we're going to have to use it. And I don't want you to look like you're breaking up. I want you to, crunch those symbols on his head." And actually, if you watch it again on YouTube, you'll see that I look not right. I understood that I could not break up, so I didn't, but I had a very peculiar look on my face. It was so funny, and I loved, "Oh, not my kind of woman." I love to do that. And I am so happy that you used, you haven't even said hello to me yet, right?
Yeah, just keep going.
Yeah, I don't shut up. But some of these things bring back amazing memories. When we did the Marlon Brando movie. And, actually, you didn't show the part where I attack him and I smack him and he smacks me back and all that kind of stuff. But I went with Marlon Brando for 8 years. And it's in the book. That's right. And this was a very delicate scene. I was already married. I had my little girl, Fernanda Risa, who was then, I think, just 2 years old. We did this in France. And it was a tough scene to do because it just brought back really severe memories. We had a very tumultuous 8-year relationship, he and I. Now I was married to a nice Jewish doctor, which is a redundant phrase, actually. But I have to tell you, that scene brought back some really terrible scenes in our relationship together in the past, and it was very tough. And which is the part you didn't see, I think he's been in bed with another woman the whole night. And I accused him of that. And he says, "I didn't." And I said, "You're lying." And finally, I'm supposed to slap him. And I really have trouble hitting people, even in scenes. It's so against the grain. And he rehearsed with me. He says, "You got to do it." He said, "I mean, if you're going to do one of those things," he says, "it's not going to look right." And we improvised a lot, and he made me do it over and over with him, not on the set, but away from the set. And he finally said, "Rita, you've got to really give it to me. You're furious, you're angry, and you're convinced that I was in bed with this woman." So I finally said, "Okay, I'll do it. And we get to do the scene for the very first time, and I gave him a big slap. And something really scary happened. When Marlon was very angry, he would inevitably also feel very threatened. He was like an animal in a way. And when I really slapped him, his hairline really went back about 1.5 inches. And I remember thinking, "Oh, shit. I think he's really angry at me." not the character. And he had a look in his eyes that was absolutely frightening. And sure enough, it was like he suddenly regressed back to our bad old days or something. She's slapping me, you know, the king. And he gave me a roundhouse that literally, you know when you hear people say, I saw stars? I did. I mean, I really, it was, and I got insanely furious. And I started to attack him. And they're rolling the camera. The director loved this. And that's the scene that remains. And very often there are real fans. This film has a cult. It's called The Night of the Following Day. And there are fans who say it was the realest scene in the whole movie. It sure was. And I asked my husband, and he said, how did it go? And I said, it was a tough day, but I'd like you to see the dailies when they come back. And he went to see them the next night, and I was really nervous about it. I mean, he knew all about Marlon and me. And he came back home into the hotel in France, and I said, so, how was the scene? And he said, boy, you two are such wonderful actors.
But your husband must have been a great guy because Marlon Brando...
He was a very great guy.
Yeah, Marlon Brando's tough to compete with. I mean, that's got to be some jealousy issues here, no?
Yes, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
Well, not so much jealous, but he always felt threatened by him. And I mean, Marlon there was something very animalistic about him. The relationship that I had with him for 8 years was truly a very lustful one. It was romantic, it was tumultuous, it was all those kinds of things. And my husband knew all about this. And he always felt a little nervous. And yet, Marlon wanted to befriend him. He liked him very much. My husband was a very, very special man.
If you haven't seen that film, you really got to see it. You're amazing.
It was a real film noir, wasn't it?
It is a film noir.
Richard Boone was in it. He played a very bad guy.
Very bad guy. Yeah, and it's a little like a European new wave film.
And you know why? Because of the director and because of the cameraman. The cameraman was a fellow named Willy Courant, K-U-R-A-N-T, and he handheld almost the entire movie. He did handheld. And that's why it looked so European. I had a European makeup girl. That was, of course, a blonde wig. And the blonde wig was Marlon, who said, come on, change your image. And it's a very interesting film. And it's based on a real story, which is the kidnapping of the, what was that famous car? The Peugeot kidnapping of the daughter, the Peugeot daughter.
She was a lot younger in real life, correct? And they sort of aged her up for the film.
Oh yes, she was much younger because they did some pretty sexy stuff.
Pretty bad stuff, yeah. And you do some pretty bad stuff. You're on heroin, you get slapped around, you're kidnapping people.
Oh, I had an interesting experience with that. I'm supposed to sniff cocaine. And of course I needed full instruction. I had no idea. So they said, oh, here's what you do. We're going to use sugar. And you're going to put it on the mirror of a compact, the so-called cocaine powder. And you're going to do all the stuff that you're supposed to do with that. You're going to roll up a dollar bill, and you're going to inhale it. And I said, that's how you eat? Yep, no problem. Just do that. Man, I went to inhale that sugar, and I went, oh my God! It hurt so much! Because it was granulated sugar, powder.
That's not how it's done.
And I mean, that should have been an outtake that they should have saved. Because I'm like, that hurt. It was terrible. It burned. This was just sugar, imagine.
Suffering for art. That's what you do.
From my art.
Oh.
I inhaled sugar. There's the title for a book. I inhaled sugar for my art.
So we also saw a great clip from kind of the same era from Colonel Molly. Which, speaking of sort of like out there roles,
Oh my God.
Louise, that's kind of a
amazing film.
Yeah.
You know, that was a film that was so far ahead of its time. It was written by a great writer who, in fact, was a cartoonist for the longest time, Jules Pfeiffer. And actually, I think it was the first play or movie that he ever wrote as a writer, not a cartoonist. And it's a very dark movie, and it has a very, very dark impression of what American men were like in that particular era, which was what, is that the 70s?
71.
Yeah,
Yep.
71. And I mean, Jules, the writer, had a real impression of what men were like, men who objectified women, which is the role that Jack Nicholson played, which was just brilliant in it. And if it hadn't been such an X-rated film, he actually should have, It should have been nominated for an Oscar. It is brilliant. And certainly Jack Nicholson should have been nominated for it. But it was, do you know that the Georgia Supreme Court banned it, and to this day people in Georgia never saw this movie? Isn't that crazy?
And were you on a hydraulic lift in that scene where you're going?
Oh, you son of a gun.
Tell me the story. Tell us all the story.
Yeah, Jules Pfeiffer, because I mean, you obviously know what she is eventually going to do. Not as much as his legs are. It's kind of while she's between. I mean, I won't go further, and it is her job in this scene to literally talk him into an erection, because he is so messed up at this point in the movie. He has objectified so many women. He's really such a bad guy. He really despises women, but he needs to have his sexual releases. And he's now at that point in the movie, which is, you really must see it, he's gotten so far down, his character is so messed up, that he now can only be talked into arousal by a woman who tells him he's the best and that women are terrible, that he's the king. You heard what she was saying, and you know, I look at that scene and I go, oh my God, it's brilliant, it's brilliant.
It's brutal.
But it was a hydraulic platform, and there's a funny story to that, which again is in the book. Because Jules Pfeiffer, the writer, wanted the scene to seem as if she's constantly descending, if you get my drift. And I want to try to be delicate about this. We were in a film studio in Vancouver, Canada, and there was, you know, film sound stages are huge, and they have huge high ceilings, very much like this, maybe even a little higher. And they wallpapered this entire wall so that you know, you felt there was never any end to this amazing descent. Here was the problem. It was a hydraulic lift. There I am on my knees. And by the way, I was not even allowed to look at Jack. Jack got under the camera to give me inspiration, and between takes I would just look at him and he would look at me in the most lascivious way. But you know, it helped me to do the scene. And when Mike Nichols, the brilliant director, would say action, I've been getting all of this terrible stuff from Jack underneath the camera, but I had to look in the lens. And that's really tough to do, to talk to a lens as though you're speaking to a person. And here was the problem. It was a hydraulic lift, and every once in a while, she carrying on as you saw some of that stuff, and I went like that. The hydraulic lift had a bubble. They get bubbles. And you cannot descend smoothly, ever, in a hydraulic lift. And we did the scene approximately about 30 times. I mean, I was really near tears at that point. It was so difficult. And I went back to the play that I was doing in New York. I was doing The Last of the Red Hot Lovers with Jimmy Coco. And I was back from Vancouver about 3 weeks. And by the way, that was the most depressing set I had ever been in my life. Really depressing set. Everybody was like. And I get a call from Mike Nichols, and he says, Rita, darling. And I said, no! No! Please tell me no! He says, we have to shoot it again. I said, no! And he said, I'm so sorry, but you know, there were just too many bumps and all that on the descent. And I had to go to Long Island, where they have the, what is the Something Cup Studio, Silver Cup Studios. And I did it stationary. And what he did was he cut back and forth between my stationary self, talking this man into arousal, and they would use whenever they could use it, the part where I was descending, and that's how it was done. It was done in 2 different places.
Where was your Oscar for that one? I mean, that's, that...
You know, actually, I agree with you. I think that was, I think that was a nomination-worthy performance, as it was a nomination-worthy, at least nomination, for the film. But you know they're not going to do that. Not for a film, a movie like that. I mean, I think they were just too scared.
Well,
what did you get your Oscar for? Well, I'm trying to talk Jack in this direction.
On a hydraulic lift. Yes. So around this time, I find very fascinating, you were also doing the electric company. So that's a juxtaposition that I'm very intrigued by.
Yeah, okay, I'm glad you brought that up. That's another funny story.
Yeah.
Because we had just started to do the electric company, which was a reading show for children. Terrifically brilliant, funny, charming, just so bright. To help teach children to read. This was the upshot of the first show.
Sesame Street.
Sesame Street. This was the upshot. This was for the slightly older children, meaning like from 6 up.
And it was cooler. It was a little like...
Oh, it was the hippest damn show in the world. And Morgan Freeman was in it.
Easy Reader.
And Easy Reader.
I love
He
it.
would say, Easy Reader, that's my name. Children's show. No, but it was a great cast. Bill Cosby, and you know, let's forget the other stuff, he was brilliant in that as well. So, no, seriously, he was marvelous. Anyway, so we had been doing the show filming the show for about 2 months. And at the Christmas party, I took the producer aside of the electric company. I said, Terrence, I think I should tell you something. I just did a film. And he said, wow, that's great. And I said, Jack Nicholson, oh my God, how amazing. And I said, well, I can job on him. The blood left his body and gathered in a pool around his ankles. I mean, obviously you never saw that in the film, but that was the whole intent. And this poor man, he just didn't know what to say to me. I said, I'm so sorry. But you know, I had a contract for this before I ever was going to do the electric company, so I had to do this film, and I'm just terribly sorry. I couldn't speak.
It's too much education for an educational show. It was just too much. But you were on the Muppet Show, of course. We saw that you won your Emmy for one of your
Oh, I
Emmys.
love that show.
So you were sort of working with children's television a lot, and your daughter was born around that time?
My daughter she had been watching Sesame Street, and then when I started to do the show, The Electric Company, she started to watch that. And it was really aimed at children like her because she was a very reluctant reader. She just wasn't interested. And interestingly, it was The Electric Company in combination with Sesame Street that interested her in reading. And of course, to this day, she now belongs to 2 book clubs. She loves to read. It's wonderful. It was a great show.
Well, I don't know if you know how many young boys fell in love with you on that show. Oh, see? Yes.
Look, one young boy. Who is now balding and with a pot belly. Thrilling.
So sorry.
You'd be amazed how many people. I went into a restaurant recently, and in order to get into the restaurant part of the restaurant, we had to go through the bar. And as I'm going through the bar, there's a young man, literally, with almost no hair on his head, And a big pot belly says, "Hey, you guys!" And I said, "Come on, I'm not that old."
Rita, I want to ask you about your first movie, because I just find it kind of fascinating where you came from. Your first movie was this girls' prison movie called So Young, So Bad.
So Young, So Bad, that's right.
And you played Dolores Guerrero, Vagrant. That was your character, Dolores Guerrero, Vagrant. And that's why you got jailed.
Right.
So, and that was the only movie where you used your real name, Rosita.
Rosita, well, that's not even my real name. My name really is Rosa Dolores Alverio. But that's my Puerto Rican name. But I had a stepfather named Moreno, and I changed it to Rosita Moreno because nobody, for whatever reason, could not pronounce Alverio. Alvarayo, Alvario, Alvarez, you know. So when my stepfather offered his last name, Moreno, I said, okay. And then Rita came later when I was under contract to MGM as a very young woman, 17, and the casting director said, we have to change your name. And I said, why? And he said, it's too Italian.
And they sort of gave you, I guess, what they call the starlet makeover then. And they tried to sort of make you look like Elizabeth Taylor?
No. That's a little bit mixed up. There were no role models when I was 17, or 15, or 13, or 18. There were none. There was no Jennifer Lopez. There was no Ava, what's her name? Longoria. Yeah, that's what happens when you're 83. Anyway, so I just took her as my role model because there was nobody. So, no, what happened at MGM is that the moment I signed with them, a talent scout had found me at a dance school recital, and he thought I was perfect material for MGM Studios, which was the studio of the great musicals. You know who they had there then? They had Gene Kelly, they had Ann Miller, they had Judy Garland. I mean, this was the musical studio. When they wanted to sign me, my feet couldn't touch the ground. It was amazing. And then I get there, and then I just start to get parts of what I now call derisively dusky maidens. That's spelled with a K, not a T. And that's all I got to do. Why'd you no love me no more? Junkie pig. You no love Rula no more? I chose you. And while it's funny now, it really wasn't. It was very hurtful. It was terrible. It was a terrible time for me. Many years of all of that.
And you sort of described yourself at that point as sort of an all-purpose ethnic character. They cast you as Native American, Italian,
I was Native
everything.
American, I was Hawaiian, I was an Arabian princess, and I just thought, trying to be helpful, well, these girls should have accents, and nobody was helping me, nobody seemed to care, so I gave them an accent, which I now call the universal ethnic accent. Because if I was playing a Hawaiian girl, she would sound like this. If I'm playing an Arabian princess, she would sound like this. If I'm playing a Native American, she would sound like this. I was just trying to be helpful.
So that was a rough period for you. Did you ever feel like this is not going to work, and this is not happening for me, and this is not what I want? Or how did you keep going?
You keep going because that's so ingrained in me. I think that's so much a part of my DNA. My mom was like that. You fall down, and the old cliche, you dust yourself off, and you just keep moving. And I got that from her. I was convinced, which is interesting, because I felt so inferior to everybody at that time. I mean, that's what led me into psychotherapy many years later. But I was so convinced that I had no value. I don't know how I don't know why I got the strength to hang on like that, but somewhere inside of me, I always knew from the time I was a very little girl, that I had talent. I knew that. And that someday, somehow, some way, someone would say, I'm going to help this girl because she has talent. I just somehow believed it. It took forever for that to happen, and it happened when I was under contract to 20th Century Fox, and I got into the film called The King and I, a great film, and that's where I met the genius Jerome Robbins, who had done the staging for the stage play as well. And when I did his only 2 films, actually, when West Side Story came along, which he had directed on the stage on Broadway, the first thing he said to his co-director, Robert Weiss, was, let's audition Rita Moreno. I think she'd be a good Anita. So it's interesting.
And what a novel idea, they cast a Puerto Rican woman as a Puerto Rican woman. And that's very progressive in Hollywood in 1960, right?
That was progressive, but in fact, I remember, seeing the scene right now that we saw, our makeup, because we were Puerto Rican, was chosen as very, very, very dark. I mean, there were shots of George Chakiris, which you will see, especially in the beginning, where he looks like somebody took him by the ankles and dipped him in a bucket of mud. And I remember saying to the makeup man one day, I am so sick of this ultra dark makeup. Why does it always, we are, Puerto Ricans particularly, are many colors. We are Taino Indians, we are Spaniards, which is where I get my fairer, not fair, but fairer coloring. We are many different colors. Some of us are coal black. And I said to him, I don't get it, I don't understand. And he said, well, you're a racist. You can imagine how I loved hearing that from him. It was crazy. It was crazy. But Jerome Robbins, the choreographer and co-director, wanted a big contrast to the extent that he had a number of the boys in the Jets, he had their hair bleached.
And so you were too ethnic for a lot of roles and not ethnic enough for West Side Story. So it was,
you couldn't win for losing.
Yeah. So you also talk in your book about how you were a little scared of the dancing in West Side Story but I find it hard to believe because you tear the roof off in that movie. So
yeah. You're such a good interviewer.
Well, I'm interested.
I'll tell you why he's so good. He does his homework. So he knows what he wants. You know what? A good interviewer becomes the audience. That's what a good interviewer does. The things that you really want to know, the good interviewer asks. So here's how I got the part of Anita in West Side Story. It's a great story. I went to audition for it, and I sang. When you go to audition for things like musicals, you come in with your own songs. You sing a couple of songs, they have a pianist there, and he plays for you. And it's not so, it can be a little nerve-wracking, but not so bad because you know these songs really well. And you've been practicing for weeks before you come in for this audition. So you do the songs, and they were very happy with that. And then they said, okay, now we want you to come in another week to do the scene from the candy store that you saw. And I had plenty of time to rehearse that and work on it, memorize it, in fact, because when you go to audition with a scene, you're actually allowed to hold the script. It's perfectly all right to read from the script, but I just decided I wanted to be terrific, and I didn't even use the script, and they were really impressed with that. They loved it. And then Jerome Robbins, the choreographer, says to me, okay, now the next thing you have to do is audition for the dancing part. And I went, and I said, how long do I have before? And he said, well, you have at least a month because we've got so many people we're trying out. I had not danced since I was 16 years old in an MGM movie called The Toast of New Orleans with a man named Mario Lanza, who was a big star. Oh, you can see there were some old farts. So I ran. I mean, I had not danced for a long time. I was already in my 20s. And I ran to the local dance school and I took every class that I could. A class in jazz dancing, which I'd never done in my whole life. Because I was a Spanish dancer. Castanets, great heel work, but jazz, I didn't know that. So I took jazz classes, I took ballet classes, I took everything that I could take. And I spent money that I didn't have paying for these classes, and I would work from 9 in the morning till about 7, 8 in the evening taking classes. And one evening, I was killing myself because I knew that this kind of dancing that Jerome Robbins did was really, really tough. And it called for great dancers, particularly those who had great ballet training. So, I remember one evening, it's about 7 in the evening, one of the teachers in one of the classes took me aside after the class and she said to me, I don't want you to come back to my class. And I said, why? I need this class. It was a jazz class. I said, I need this. And she said, honey, I'm sorry, but you worked so hard that you turned a funny shade of purple. And I'm afraid that something bad is going to happen to you, and I don't want it to happen in my class. And I ran to the bathroom and I looked in the mirror and oh my God, she was right. I worked so hard I went past red in the face, I went eggplant. I worked so hard, in fact, that I would raise fevers. Fevers. In other words, you know when you have a fever, how you're very hot, but you have goosebumps? That's how I would be at the end of this kind of day. You know, luckily I had enormous stamina. I always have had. And I got through that. So when the time for the audition came, I was so nervous. I called a girlfriend who had played Anita in a bus and truck company of West Side Story. And I said, is there any way you can help me? Can you teach me some steps? Give me a heads up. And she said, sure. She said, I'll teach you a little piece of America, and I'll teach you a little piece of the Mambo at the Gym, where the two gangs are competing with each other in dance. And she said, but here's the problem. I can't guarantee that the steps I'm going to teach you are the steps you are going to learn in the dance audition. Because dance auditions are very different from the other auditions. Dance auditions, you come in, they say, bring a full skirt. And they say, and you learn the steps right then and there. Very slowly, like, ta 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 ta, slowly. And then at a certain point, the dance director says to you, okay, now do it up to speed and with style. And so my heart was in my throat when I went into audition. I really wanted that part so badly. And he said, took my hand, and it was all mirrors, as in old dance studios. He said, here, let me teach you the first part of America that I want you to learn. I went, okay. And he taught me the part that Deborah had taught me. Then we get through that, and then he said, now I want to teach you a part of the Mambo at the Gym. And the guy went, all right. And it was what she had taught me. You could say I had a heads up. When I left the audition, Jerome Robbins, the director and choreographer, called his assistant dance director and said, I'm dying to know what happened, because we really want her in the movie. But can she do it? Can she pull it off? And Jeffrey said to Jerry, well, I'll tell you something. I have a feeling she hasn't danced in a while. But he said she seems to have a great sense of energy and joy when she dances, and she has a great sense of humor, which of course you need for America. And he said, and I think we can do it. He said, I think we can beat it out of her. He said, but here's what's really impressive. She learns so fast. So P.S., I got the Oscar and I got the Golden Globe.
So Rita, I just want to ask you about the Oscar, like the night of the Oscar. So that was probably kind of overwhelming for a young woman. Did you understand did you grasp the gravity of what was happening in terms of breaking ground for Hispanic women? Or were you just so excited for yourself?
First of all, I was doing another film in Manila, the Philippines, a really crappy World War II movie. I mean, I'd gone from West Side Story to that again. You know, yet another dusky maiden. It was so depressing. And then I got nominated for Best Featured Actress in a musical or a comedy. And I came to, I flew, because I was still doing the film in Manila, and I flew to LA, and George Chakiris was my day, because we were great friends then, we still are. He's my daughter's and godfather. But I honestly thought that Judy Garland was going to get it, because she was up for the first dramatic role in her life in a fabulous film called Judgment at Nuremberg. More than that, if that wasn't bad enough, she was in a hospital because she hadn't been feeling well. You know, heaven knows she probably overdosed on something. And there was a TV camera in her room at the hospital. I thought, well, you know, I mean, that's great. You know, there's no chance. I forgot, though, that people, you know, voted in advance of that moment. So Rock Hudson calls out my name, and my mom was in the back of me, and it's in the kinescope. It's a kinescope. It's not even a tape anymore. And she grabbed me, and George Chakiris hugged me, and I remember walking down the aisle and saying, "Don't run, it's not dignified." Because I had seen too many actresses running to get to the stage, and you know, you're afraid the applause is going to stop. And you don't want to reach the stage when the applause is already stopped. It's a show business thing. And I didn't. And I went up on stage, but I was so stunned that I did what may have been not only the shortest, but the most embarrassingly short acceptance in the history of the Oscars. I said, I was holding it, and I said, "I can't believe it." Good Lord. I leave you with that. That wouldn't be my chance to say on behalf of every Puerto Rican, and you know, I've done that. I could have done that, but I didn't. I was so overwhelmed. Didn't expect it to happen.
And you've been very candid about pointing out how that Oscar didn't really necessarily help you.
Oh, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
What happened is that I thought, well, wow, I have now won an Oscar and the Golden Globe for the same performance. I'm going to find work. I didn't do a film for 7 years. My heart was broken. Now, I was offered some more gangland type movies that weren't anywhere near, you know, like West Side Story, and I said, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. Holding my little gold man under my arm, I'm not going to do that anymore. And I showed them I did not work in movies for 7 years. Can you believe that? It's a tough business, really.
It's kind of shocking, but you had a lot of success on the stage after that. I just want to talk briefly about your role on the Ritz, because it's hilarious.
Okay, there are 5 gay guys in here. Okay, 10 gay guys.
It's about knowing your audience, as you mentioned. I know, this is great. So the Ritz, there's a movie version too you can rent. It's kind of hilarious. So you play.
It's a funny.
It's a Terrence McNally play, and you play a spectacularly untalented performer named Googie Gomez.
She is Puerto Rican, and by the way, I invented her. I gave birth to her when I was still doing West Side Story, the movie. And dancers, very often when they go get a 10-minute break, do 2 things. They light up a cigarette, unbelievable, and they do funny bits to make each other laugh. And one time during one of those breaks, I said, wait, okay, I got this character. Literally, this is how it happens, like I burped and out she came. And I said, okay, there's this character who's auditioning for a bus and truck of gypsy, and she's Puerto Rican, she has absolutely no talent. And then I got up, and while everyone's smoking, I'm saying, I had a dream about you, baby. And thus was Googie Gomez born. She didn't have a name then, but Terrence McNally saw me do her at somebody's party. And there, I not only sang Everything's Coming Up Roses, but I did, the Player King speech from Hamlet. And big dear bitch I pray you, as I pronounce it to you, tripping on the tongue. And then I did Hiawatha from that jar, some get you go there. I find her extremely funny. When I'm in my kitchen, that's when she comes out. And I start doing things like her, and I laugh. Oh, say unjuicy. Anyway, Terrence McNally was at this party, and he literally fell off his chair. And he said, I don't ever remember seeing such a funny character. I'm going to write a part in a play for that character. And I thought, yeah, I don't have that kind of luck. And about 3 months later, the guy was in the play with on Broadway said, did you get the script yet? And I said, what script? And he said, it's called The Tubs. And I said, no, what's The Tubs? He says, it's about a gay Turkish bath house. I said, who wrote it? And he said, Terrence McNally wrote it. He wrote a part for you, and he's calling her Googie Gomez. And I did get the script, and I remember I laughed so hard, my husband was trying to sleep, and the bed just kept shaking. Because Terrence really understood her. And she is the funny, I love her. And I've been asked very often if the Hispanic people were offended. And no, they love Googie. Because she has no talent. But she has such balls. I mean, it's called hubris, right? I mean, as far as she's concerned, Barbara Streisand Estomayak. And if she didn't steal those numbers, I will be the star. That's who she is. She's just, I love her. She's delicious.
She's right, and I think that it takes someone with a lot of talent to play someone with no talent.
You cannot sing badly unless you can really sing. You know what? I had an understudy in the play, and when I went on my 2-week holiday from the show, the understudy took over, and it was a disaster because she was Googie Gomez. And we almost had to close the show until I came back because she was a disaster. She was a disaster. You gotta know how to really sing and really dance in order to ruin those 2 disciplines. Really. Yeah.
Get it. Totally get it. So, I think we're drawing short on time, unfortunately, but it's like...
I'm sure, because I haven't shut up for a second. I do have to mention one very important thing that's important to me.
Yes, please.
And I just recently put out my very first album in Spanish. And don't let that discourage you from getting it, because it's really beautiful. And it was produced by, and he's the guy who thought about it, Emilio Estefan. It's a beautiful album. It's all in Spanish. And what the surprise of the album is that I sing Somewhere from West Side Story, but in Spanish. Can I sing a little tiny chunk? Sé que hay un lugar difícil de encontrar, donde el silencio y la paz It has everything you can imagine. It has jazz. I do a song in Spanish that is divine, which is jazzy, which I think never existed in the Hispanic album before.
Is this the first time you sang somewhere in Spanish on an album?
Well, it didn't have a Spanish lyric, and Emilio just, he writes music, and he put a Spanish lyric to it, which is just lovely.
It's a beautiful album. Critics it's interesting that critics have been saying that it sounds like it's sung by someone very young.
You know? How interesting is it, really?
Yes.
Where did you read that?
I read it on the internet, so it's true.
Yeah. I'll tell you something. You'll love this story. Emilio was so enthused about the album because we didn't have anybody yet when we finished it who was going to produce it. I don't know what it's called. Release it.
Release it.
Yeah. And he went to Sony, where he used to be the CEO there many years ago. And so they know him there. And he said, I want to play Joe two tracks of my new artist. So he played two of my tracks, but he didn't say who it was. And this is the first time I ever realized that I have a very young voice, because he said, wow, we love it. Who's the girl? And I guess I just never realized that it's a very young voice. I'm about to be 84 in December.
You don't look it, act it, or sound it. So maybe you're not. Maybe you're not
Gloria
really
Steinem
84.
says, this is what 84 looks like.
We should all be so lucky. So, Rita, we're going to show West Side Story, and I think everyone is...
Oh, I've got to have them look for one thing.
Please,
Do we
yes,
have a moment?
yes.
Okay. I want you to look for one thing, and when it happens, I want you to raise an enormous cheer. Okay, we're doing America. And, when you're rehearsing, you use... the girls have to always use skirts, because we used a lot of skirts. But we always brought our own skirts, cotton fabric. And the boys were always either in jeans or in tights and in t-shirts. And then comes the day when you put on your costumes for the first time, and you do the very first day of actually filming the song, the number. And to our shock, particularly George DeCuire's and myself, my dress was made of silk, and his beautiful black suit, remember that black suit, was made of shark skin material, which is very slippery. Silk is very slippery. Now, at the very end of America, which is just a super wonderful end, the girls are doing the very last thing, and the boys take our hand and we twirl, and we end up from this side on this shoulder of the boy, and we say ole. And the way you do that is you put your leg, the girl puts her leg in the back of the boy's back like this, in order to hang on, because it's very hard for him to hold her up. It's one thing to have, hold her by the hands, but she still has to help by literally digging her toes of the shoe into the boy's back. Here was the problem. Aside from the silky, slippery part, which was already really bad, my behind was broader than George's shoulder. His shoulder could only accommodate one buttock. And as if that weren't bad enough, his shoulders sloped. So I can't tell you how many takes we did. It was a lot. So we do the thing, he twirls me around, I jump up on his shoulder, and we did about 26 takes. The kids wanted to kill me. But we had all those other things going, the silk, the shark skin, the slope shoulder, the one buttock. So when I land on this shoulder tonight, I expect you to just scream and yell and stomp and cheer me.
And Just wanted to just present you with a lofty lifetime achievement.
Take a picture.
Oh, lovely. This is beautiful. Wow. Thank you so much. I got. Can you send it to me?
We'll send it. You don't have to carry it on the plane.
No, I can't carry it. It's too heavy. My luggage is so damn low. I did some major shopping. Here.
Rita Moreno is good for local economy.
I think I just paid the rent for 2 boutiques. I paid for their rent this year.
Well, if anyone
Thank you.
deserves
That's
this,
lovely.
it's you.
Thank you so
I mean,
much. You were wonderful on this. Thank you.
Rita Moreno